Alright, so, I mean, Google's definitely deviating from what it tends to do here. Usually after all-time high, it sets up for a pullback, but today it's gapping up to a new all-time high on really strong volume pre-market. So if Google can kind of hold these 824s, 825s off this open, I believe you can definitely look at some 835s potentially on the day. Also, definitely watching this Apple gap. This is the strongest gap up in Apple, definitely a few weeks. Typically, the play on Apple on these gap ups, it's pretty straightforward. It fills the gap. So what you want to watch for, though, is it able to go below that first 3-minute low? If it is, then I suspect Apple will fill the gap back down to 820. And if this thing goes red, you could really have it target down to 415, especially on a 418.66 breakdown. That is a level from last year. 418.66 was the lowest point Apple was last year, just before its big earnings gap. I'll show you. So this is the support you're at right now on Apple. Okay. And you can see 418.66 from January 13th. That's where I'm getting that low. You can see here was the all-time high, 427.75, and then it pulled back down to 418.66, bested that all-time high, pulled back again, held 418.66, and then, here's the gap up on earnings, and then it made that run to 500, and we all know what happened after that. So that's why I'm getting this 418.66 level from as really being a key level for Apple. If 418.66 breaks, then it's definitely going to 415. You break 415, then 410's in play. Another setup I'm watching, Chipotle. Chipotle rarely trades volume pre-market. And when I say rarely, this thing rarely trades any volume within the first minute of the day. Usually Chipotle doesn't start trading until 9:20, 9:32, 9:33. So I'm looking to possibly get very aggressive on Chipotle on the 320s and the 315s, the 320 calls, as well as the 330 calls. I'm going to play one in the money, one out of the money, once I kind of gauge how it's opening up. Chipotle is a tricky one because the spreads are usually pretty wide, but if this thing can trade some volume right at the open, then I think you could definitely see 330s today. Especially when you got a market that, you've got the Dow that's going to open up right at all-time highs, it looks like. So just kind of pre-market, I identify my favorite setups. Coming into the day, I prepared for Apple, Priceline, Amazon, Chipotle, Google, and SPY. Of those that I prepared for, not really feeling this gap on SPY. I sold my calls yesterday after hours at 26 cents. Obviously, that looks like a mistake today. But not really feeling this gap up on SPY. Not really feeling this gap up on Google. So Chipotle and Apple is where I'm keying in at the outset. Also Priceline, the 715 level. Really, I don't see much resistance until 718 to 720. And then Amazon also is another one that's kind of in between resistance and support. I see supports 270, 271, resistance 275. So just going to let things open up here, see how we look at the open, and see what shapes up. Salesforce, this is one it's gapping down. This stock's super strong. Wouldn't be surprised to see it retrace back to the break-even line, given how strong it's been. Probably got downgraded or something. I haven't prepared for it today. I'm going to keep an eye on it, but you generally won't see me trade a stock that I didn't prepare to trade that day. And that's a shame because usually I do prepare for Salesforce with at least some simple prep, but it's made a huge run the last 2 days, so not surprising that you've seen some pullback today. Gonna make a little note here. Chipotle, 927. So yesterday, Chipotle didn't go below the opening price by more than $1.13, and it didn't pull back from the high of day by more than $3.34. So I'm going to watch to see where it opens, and if it's able to avoid going below the open by more than $1.13, I am definitely going to consider that pretty bullish. Notice and look at Apple, just really coming down hard off of those 424s. Going to make a note of that. Really getting sold hard. This open is trickier across the board than, say, yesterday's. You know, anytime you get gap ups like these, it's always going to require a little bit more tactical execution. Generally, I place a trade within the first 3 minutes of the day, I would say. But I think today, probably going to have to let things play out a little bit more, see where some of these gaps pull back to, where they hold support. Little note on Amazon. Amazon never pulled back from high a day more than $1.80 yesterday, and also didn't go below the first 3 minute low. I keep all my stocks that I'm kind of watching up here so that even if I'm on one page, I can just take a quick glance up and see what price level they're at so I'm not missing anything. I see Salesforce continuing that gap down. So mainly, first thing I'm going to watch this gap on Apple, see how we react, and I'm keeping a really close eye on Chipotle, because I do think that's one with a high short interest that could really get going today. And it's up 5 days in a row as of yesterday. Last time it was up 5 days in a row. It accomplished a 6-day winning streak, so that bodes well for today. You'll see me, once 9:30 comes, I always mark the opening prices on my stocks to track if they're able to stay above that open. So 421.47 is our open on Apple. Kind of moving up. 274 open on Amazon. No open yet on Chipotle. 716 open on Priceline. Apple has moved the highest amount above the opening price that it has in the last 2 days. Google's just running nuts. Watching for a pullback here on Google. 829 open. Huge momentum. Want to see maybe a 830 test and hold here on Google. So no volume on Chipotle right at the open, kind of disappointing. Apple's looking solid. It moved $1 above the open. on really strong volume. Let's see if it can keep holding here. So Google, I see back below 830. Google's testing that opening price. It's a huge volume within the first few minutes on Google, but it's kind of getting sold into here. Apple, not extending much. So making a high day note on Apple here. So Apple didn't really move more than $2 above the opening price. Alright, Google held open. I'm going to get a little feeler here at 750. See if we can get 835s out of this. Nice bid at 830. Don't want to see it crack 830 again. Really big churn here. Want to see it get back above 831 and set up with a nice hold, because it's traded a ton of volume without really extending. But if we can get some 831 extension, then I'm going to target 835s, because that's where I think this thing's going based on how much volume it's traded here. Got to break 831 and get a nice burst. See Chipotle still just at 323. So 831 test at 934. Still waiting on a breakout though. There we go, getting some prints above 831 now. Certainly don't want to see the ass start coming back below 831. Need to see some extension here. 6K bidder at 831, printing some 831.50s. Let's break that and get some 832 tests, and we're good to go on the 835 target. See if we get a new high day test here. Certainly want to see that. Selling in the Momo there on that 832 cross. You know, nice $500 trade. Didn't have to put in much money at all, and still get some decent profits out of that. Now, the one thing I don't like up here on Google is this thing is trading just a shit ton of volume without really moving a ton beyond the opening price. And some of you, you know, obviously you like volume, but you also want extension. So we opened at 829, we're at 832. We've only moved $3 beyond the opening price. So that's kind of why I took profits here. I'll kind of wait for it. I'd like to see some better extension, to be honest. But I'm all out of that trade on Google. So solid first trade. Notice we entered as it pulled back to the opening price and it held it. So that was a good little setup there. Let's check up on Chipotle. So Chipotle, you know, it's pushing up, but no volume, no trade there. No trade there for me. Price line, you know, pushing up at that 720 resistance. Volume, really good. Oh no, that was yesterday's close. Okay. Amazon held at 271. Apple, you can see the extension. So Google's still bobbing and weaving. So I'm okay with that exit. Kind of, you know, we'll see where it goes, but you're not going to catch the entire length of the move. You got to kind of pick your spots. I'm going to key in on Apple here because it's approaching an interesting level here. We're breaking 425, busting a move here. Nice 3-minute volume pace. I'll make a little note here on Apple. 425 test. I've got resistance, big time resistance, 425.80 to 427. So notice Google pulling back from those 832s a little bit. I'm going to keep a modest eye on Google, but Apple's providing some better volatility. Chipotle, nice price action, but no volume, so I don't like trading that move. SPY, you can see those 154s called out yesterday at 19 cents. They're up to 40 cents, so hopefully some people cashed out there. So this isn't much extension on Apple off of this 425 break. So 937 we crossed 425. So could be getting a little short setup here. Versus high a day. The longer Google keeps holding 832s, the better it is that 835 is in play. So here you go. Google's still trying. Might have to do some chasing. Want to watch how Apple reacts at this first 3-minute high. Testing high day here. All right, there goes Google. So Apple's spending this entire 3-minute range between 425-ish and 426 for the most part. So still kind of waiting on signs of a stall out here. Amazon went below the first 3-minute low. Nice volume, but you know, it was able to move lower on Amazon here. Kind of looks like a potential short setup in Amazon versus high a day, but that hurt me yesterday, so I'm not going to go with that again. And there you can see, you know, Google's approached that 835 target. So it did a good job holding those 832s, and you know, here's the net result. Going to jump in some Apple here, just a little scalp trade. Stop loss, on some 426 holds. So, all out 410, quick scalp, could go lower. You'll notice when you watch me trade, I don't try and catch an entire move. Just kind of pick your spots, make your trades, and let your portfolio just kind of do the talking. You're always going to leave gains on the table, and you're always going to leave losses on the table. The goal is to have more than losses, and and just have a reason for what you're doing. And again, I'm trying to use small amounts here to kind of show you guys that it doesn't take large amounts of money to make successful trades. On my first trade on Google, my principal was $3,500. First trade on Apple, my principal was $3,900. And we've managed a decent morning so far. So Amazon, that short continues to work versus 275. Chipotle, you can't do anything with $1 in the spread. Priceline, nice move. Amazon really pulling back some here. So Apple, you had a 3-minute candle go below the previous high a day. Okay, so want to watch this range here. This is the range I'm watching where kind of have a long side bias, because based on my prep work, Apple did do some bullish, have experienced some definite bullish price action. Based on my prep, 427 to 430 is the target for today, given it shows the ability to hold this 423.50 level. So 9:45, first 15 minutes are in the books. So we closed that first 15-minute candle at 424.36. I make a note of my 15-minute closes. Google closed at 8:34.43. Why are 15-minute closes so important? Because a lot of times you'll see the price action between 9:45 and 10 o'clock. If it's able to go above or below that first 15-minute closing price, you'll see that kind of dictate the rest of the day. So one of the main things I'm watching for on Apple is ability to register a 15-minute close during 9:45 to 10 o'clock that is greater than $1 above the 9:30 to 9:45 close. So that means we need to close at 425.36 or greater on Apple by 10 o'clock to set up that 427 to 430 target. Why did I choose that criteria? Because that's something that it hasn't been able to do the last 2 days when it's been acting very bearish. The truth is in the charts. You look at Apple yesterday, closed that first 15-minute candle at 426.82. It was never able to register a close greater than that close altogether, let alone $1 greater. And then you look at Friday's close of 433.76. Highest close it registered was 434.70. Okay, so again, never was a dollar above it. Oh, and then 434.76. So you had it be a dollar above it, but it wasn't greater than a dollar. So testing this key level here on Apple. So definitely watching this. See those puts, move from 390 entry up to 460. So again, left some on the table, but I said it was a scalp trade. That's what I was going for. That's what I got. You have to be at peace with the trades you're making. Look at that. Awesome, awesome, awesome short on Amazon. And these opened up in the 50s. Now they're up above a dollar. Hit a $1.21, so that that's 100%. And then the other part of trading is kind of choosing which stocks you're going to trade that day, because you're certainly not going to be able to catch all the moves. Amazon obviously missed this move that it gave me today, but that's because I chose to be playing Apple and Google. And you really have to identify that within the first 60 to 90 seconds of the day. And really, you should be identifying that pre-market, kind of where you're going to play for today. So you can see Apple finding support above that low, above that initial 3-minute high. So that's good stuff right there. Again, I am personally waiting for 425.37s because that is $1 greater than the initial 15-minute close. Lower volume on the pullback, but it has pulled back off of the high of day by nearly $3 already, so it's not necessarily a great sign for Apple. This is really a key level right here that it needs to hold if you want to get bullish on this name. And it's not doing it. So, this I'm getting more and more inclined to want to short Apple on a bounce here versus go long on this pullback, just based on what it's showing me. Yes, it showed me the ability to move higher, but right after that, it showed me the ability to give up, 3 points off that high day. So, and now I have a nice short setup because I can use that 425.36 level as my stop loss. So I can, okay, so I'd like to, short a 424 cross if I can. See what it shows you right here. Amazon, based on this pullback to 270, 271, it's just giving you a decent long entry versus 270. So Google off a high a day from 835.85, pulled back about $3.79 or so. Just trying to do it in my head. And it's able to get back near high a day. So that's just something you want to know. You can see we're still in this channel. I'm going to get rid of these 435 calls and bring up the 430s. I'll just go a little closer to the money. Well, let's see here. Yeah, we're doing it up. So, in with a little starter here. Not getting very aggressive because I don't like shorting at support, which is right here. But I do still want to position because I like, just kind of what it's showing. It looks net bearish to me. So I'm going to target a move back down to our 421.47 open. See if we can get some 515s for these puts. I'm selling my 515s, huh? Fucking assholes. I saw those prints at 515. There you go. So again, just small trade, just trying to show you guys tactical trades here. I don't really worry about my gains, and I don't really worry about my losses. If you make trades and you trust that you're executing properly, okay, then you'll be fine. And again, I'm not doing a great job executing in my view. I'm getting really solid entries for the most part. I need to work on my exits. That's what I need to improve. But overall, I'm still satisfied. Meanwhile, in other news, Google just keeps being a force to be reckoned with. The 810 calls we had yesterday at 620 up to 26 bucks. That's sick. You'll see me play smaller and smaller as the day goes on, as to not give back any of my profits in the event I do have to take losses. And you can see, we've pulled back to that open. So, the inability to hold this first 3-minute high was a great, great sell side indicator. Also, the move below the previous 3-minute low off of a high a day was a good indicator of the top. So those are two things that come tomorrow I'll be looking for. Once again, the very first thing I said to watch for, the ability to register a 15-minute close $1 greater than the initial 15-minute close, was a great short. You never got close to that 425.36 level. You can see our high is 424.91. So that was a great short in and of itself. And Google just keeps going and going and going. What else is new? Salesforce not really bouncing yet. Notice though, put in its low a day at the open. Hasn't gone below it since. So Salesforce is a nice little long setup here versus low a day. Okay, closer you get to that low a day, boom, that's your stop out. Price line respected that, or is respecting that 718 to 722 resistance, I should say. Chipotle, price action's awesome, but I can't play a stock that's only traded 46,000 shares within the first 30 minutes of the day. You can see that that's low volume. Again, that some of you might do that, and if you did, it's worked out on Chipotle. But I mean, look, if there was better volume, you would see tighter spreads. 660 by $8, you're going to have a hard time getting filled on some of these positions when it comes to a stock like Chipotle. Man. And then, sometimes you have this, where you just sell too early, and it is what it is. Just have to be at peace with yourself, and you got to focus on what you're doing. The stock is going to do whatever the hell it wants to. Shit like this, I just kind of sit back and watch it because I don't know about you guys, but this is the type of stuff I get off to. It's just watching sick level 2 action. Okay. This is just training your eyes up here. You've got a stock that's putting in all-time highs, and you just absorb that price action. And whether you have a position or not, just by watching, you can definitely get better. Okay, so Apple bouncing here back into this range. Now I want to see, does it start getting rejected here around some of these previous highs? Found good support at the opening price. The other thing to watch for me on Apple was a less than $2.89 total range on 15-minute candles between 9:45 and 10:15 to signal tight 15-minute ranges on the day. Well, we had 424.91 down to 421.58. So we had a $3.33 range. So what that means to me is Apple has the potential to see expanded 15-minute ranges as the day goes on. So, that still could mean that 427 to 430 is in play. But again, I'm waiting on 425s, 36s. Until you get that, I favor the short side of the trade here with a target down to 420. You can see the downtrend has started on a 3-minute chart. Okay, so this range up here, looking at shorts. All right, got a little slowdown here. Any questions so far? Now would be a little short time to ask them. And again, this is a part of watchhimtrade.com, which is where I'm going to offer these live trading sessions. This will not be offered through stockhaven.com. And that'll be $100 per month. Dow Jones, new all-time high. Isn't that something? Apple busting a move here. Apple looks like it wants to hit 430 today. Yeah, I will definitely, try and call out my trades just like I've been doing today. If people are listening on the mic, you, for the most part, should have heard me say that I'm buying calls, buying puts, whatever. If I didn't, I will make sure to try and do that in the future. And all these recording sessions will be archived so that if you're busy doing your own thing, you can watch them at night if you want to. So you can see high on that last 3 minute, 425.24 for Apple. Rejected off that 425.36 that I've been saying is definitely the level to watch. So if you got short up there, that was a nice entry with that stop loss. 425.36 stop loss. Again, I'm not short, not long here. I do like how it broke above these highs right here. That's some good action for Apple. If I was short, I would not have even liked to see it, break back above this 424 to 425 range, and it was able to do that. and the 3-minute volume pace is staying above 260K. Going to make a note of that. So if we start holding these 423.50s to 424.50s, this thing's going to 427. That's my take on things right now. So Amazon held that 270 for now. Certainly don't want to see it keep creeping back to 270 if I was in a long trade on there. Really nice 15-minute volume on SPY. More 425 tests on Apple. Looking at these 430 calls at $4 here. All right, getting that cross. 4 up candles in a row on the 3-minute. 3-minute chart tends to have a pullback after that, but this is definitely really bullish. So looking to enter on a 425 test that holds. Getting extension here. So 425 extension. Long trade intact. Verse 425 with 425.37 close on 15-minute, setting up 427 to 430 target. So this low right here, you know, really no real reason to go back below 424.70s. So I'm going to watch this. We've got 4 minutes to go until that next 15-minute close. If we get a close above 425.36 coming up here these next 5 minutes, then we're good to go on the long side on Apple, in my opinion. So I'm in at 430 on the 430 calls for a starter. I'm going to stay with this as long as we close above 425.36 on the 15-minute chart. I'd like to see a new high day. 7,500 share seller I saw pop up. I think 425.75 or right around there is where he's at. So struggling to register that 425.36 close. Not liking this action. Want to see it bust back above it. The fact that it's doing such a bob around 425.30s, 425.40s tells me that I'm focused on the right price point. One more minute here. Needs a push. 92K block, 425.10. There we go. Nice action right there. There you go, motherfucker. That's your butt. So I got out based on getting to my 427 target right here. That was the low end of the target. And the fact that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up candles in a row on the 3-minute chart. Okay? You know, just piece your way to a solid day. And again, haven't even had to use much principal. Haven't had to put much risk on the line at all, which is nice. And I know you guys noticed the intense push the last minute, just before 10:15. And it, you know, ended up closing at 426. So you got your close $1 above the initial close, and that is definitely what's sparking this bullish move here. It's doing something it hasn't been able to do the last few days, and you're seeing the benefit of that. You know, this is definitely profit zone though. You know, 427 to 430 is the target. We hit the initial target, and we've got all these up candles in a row on the 3-minute. Not fair of me to expect the stock to continue to put in up candles like this on a 3-minute chart. It's going to need to do some pulling back, in my opinion. Going to move this lower candle up to the recent high a day because I want to see previous resistance become support. And this range right here, potential buy zone. Meanwhile, we've got new resistance up here on 428. So that's probably pretty much a wrap for the morning for me so far. You know, solid morning, solid trades. Hopefully you guys got a lot out of that as Apple tests that 428 level. Let's just do a recap here. So Amazon can't seem to get off the mat versus 270. Not really a good sign. Salesforce broke below the initial opening low, and you can see that as soon as you did that, you know, you cracked a little bit harder too. So so for those curious, you know, this portfolio, you know, I'm only playing with $31,800. I started this with about $18,000 at the around February 1st to try and prepare for, you know, watch and trade and playing with smaller amounts of money, so that, because I think that's where people will learn the most. You know, anybody can go in with $200,000 and pull 10% and, you know, boom, you got 20 grand. But I think we become better traders when we're playing with smaller amounts of money. And then you just kind of let the portfolio grow, and that's what then allows you to play with a bigger amount. Apple, awesome action. I did not expect to see this type of extension so quickly. I mean, when is the last time you saw 7 up candles in a row on a 3-minute chart on Apple? So, all right, guys, good stuff. Hope everybody got something out of that. Again, this is a preview of, you know, watchhimtrade.com, and just really quick. So the way it'll work, if you're a member of Watch Him Trade, is, you know, you'll subscribe, you'll log in to Watch Him Trade, and then you will see an icon here in a second. Apple, if you've been fortunate enough to be involved in this move to the upside on the call side, I strongly recommend you're taking profits. I strongly recommend you are taking profits right here, right now. I don't often tell people when to sell, but you've got all these up candles in a row. I know I've been saying it for a while, but this thing's going to pull back, you know, $2 or so, and those calls are going to drop pretty quick. So, not saying I'd short the thing, but I would definitely be considering the fact that, you know, we've moved into that 427 to 430 target, and this is probably a prudent area to be taking some off. So yeah, so if you're a member of Watch and Trade, if you decide to pay the $100 a month, what you'll do is you'll simply log in, and then when you click this icon right here, it will take you to the Join Me screen, just like you're at now. And then again, the preparation journal will have the different notes and stuff that I just mentioned to you, such as Apple being able to close $1 above the initial 15-minute close, or Apple trading in wider than a $2.89 range between 9:45 and 10:15, signaling possible range extension, which we've also gotten. Okay? So just wanted to point that out, that when you are a member, that is how you'll go about getting access to my screen. And, you know, the link will change every day. So don't think that you can just be in Stockhaven chat and somebody's going to share the link with you, because they're not going to want to pay $100 just so you can get it for free. All right, guys. Good stuff.